It started with laughter. Not the kind that brings joy, but the kind that cuts deep, sharp, and cruel. On a hot summer afternoon, the city square was alive. Children ran through fountains. Street vendors shouted prices. Phones buzzed. Life moved fast, except for one moment that would soon freeze everything. A black woman stood near the sidewalk waiting. Her name was Danielle Moore. She wore a simple blue dress, hair pulled back neatly, her posture calm but proud. In one hand, she held a small folder. In the other, her phone. She looked like someone heading to an appointment. Nothing dramatic. Nothing threatening. Yet to Officer Kyle Brenner, she was entertainment. Kyle leaned against his patrol, car with another officer beside. Him, bored, sweaty, laughing. The kind of laugh that comes when someone thinks their badge makes them untouchable. "Watch this," Kyle said, smirking. Danielle didn't hear him at first. She was reading a message on her phone when she felt it. A sudden, violent blast of cold water slammed into her side. She screamed, not in fear but shock, as the pressure knocked her backward. The folder flew from her hand. Papers scattered across the wet pavement. People gasped. Kyle was holding a high-pressure hose, attached to a fire hydrant they'd illegally opened. Water soaked Danielle from head to toe. Her dress clung to her body. Her hair flattened. She slipped, barely catching herself from falling. And Kyle? Kyle laughed. Loud, unashamed. "What?" he shouted. "Cooling you off!" The other officer chuckled nervously. A few bystanders froze, unsure what to do. Phones came out, but no one spoke. Danielle stood there, shaking. Water dripped from her sleeves. Her hands trembled, not from the cold, but from humiliation. "Why did you do that?" she asked, her voice steady but strained. Kyle raised an eyebrow. "You were blocking the sidewalk." "I wasn't." A man in the crowd finally spoke. "Hey, leave her alone." Kyle snapped his head toward him. "Mind your business." The man froze. Just like everyone else. That was the moment Danielle understood something painful and familiar. No one was coming to save her. She finished gathering her papers and stood slowly, water dripping onto the pavement beneath her shoes. Her breathing was controlled now. Her face, calm. Too calm for someone who'd just been publicly humiliated. Kyle tilted his head, annoyed. "You got something else to say?" Danielle met his eyes. "Yes," she said softly. "Turn that hose off." The officer laughed again. "Or what?" For a second, the world seemed to hold its breath. Danielle reached into the soaked pocket of her dress. Kyle stiffened. The other officer's hand twitched near his holster. Danielle pulled out a thick, waterproof ID case. She opened it slowly and held it up. Inside wasn't a weapon. It was a military identification card, sealed and unmistakable. Name, Brigadier General Danielle Moore. Branch, United States Army. Status, active duty. Kyle squinted. "What is that supposed to be?" Danielle took one step closer. "That," she said evenly, "is why you should turn the hose off. Now." The laughter vanished. The other officer leaned in, eyes widening. "Kyle." Kyle scoffed, but his voice cracked. "Anyone can fake a card." Danielle didn't argue. She reached back into her folder, still soaked, and pulled out a second document. Then a third. Orders, credentials, a Pentagon seal. She held them out. "You assaulted a senior officer of the United States Army," Danielle said. "In public. On camera." The sound of the hose hitting the pavement echoed loudly as Kyle's hand went slack. Water sprayed uselessly onto the street. Someone in the crowd whispered, "Oh my God." Another voice said, "She's real." Phones rose higher. People who had been silent seconds ago began murmuring, then talking, then shouting. Kyle stepped back. "This is getting blown out of proportion." Danielle looked past him directly at the other officer. "I want your supervisor," she said. "And I want them here now." The other officer nodded quickly, already on the radio. Kyle swallowed hard. For the first time since the afternoon began, he wasn't smiling. Danielle stood soaked, humiliated, but unbroken. And somewhere far above this street, the Pentagon was about to receive a call that would end 2 careers forever. The radio crackled. "Supervisor en route," the officer said, his voice tight. "Ita 3 minutes." Kyle stood frozen, eyes darting between Danielle and the phones pointed at him. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool air. The street, once loud, had gone eerily quiet. Danielle reached into her folder one last time. She pulled out her phone. Kyle scoffed weakly. "You think making a call is going to scare anyone?" Danielle didn't look at him. She pressed one contact. The line connected instantly. "Yes, ma'am," a calm voice answered. "Pentagon operations." Several people in the crowd gasped. Danielle spoke clearly, professionally, every word carrying authority. "This is Brigadier General Danielle Moore. I'm currently detained by local officers who assaulted me with a fire hose without cause. Location is 4th and Jefferson. I'm requesting immediate oversight." Silence. Then, "Understood, General. Stay where you are." The call ended. Kyle laughed. Too loud, too forced. "You really think the Pentagon cares about some street argument?" Danielle finally looked at him again. "They do," she said. "Because I was here to inspect federal training compliance for your department." The words hit like a punch. The second officer's face drained of color. "General Moore," he said quietly. Kyle staggered backward. The captain turned slowly toward him. "Explain, now." Kyle opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Phones captured everything. The captain looked at the soaked documents in Danielle's hand, the puddle beneath her shoes, the hose lying useless on the pavement. He turned back to Kyle. "You're relieved of duty," he said flatly. "Badge weapon now." Kyle's hands shook as he unclipped his badge. A siren wailed in the distance. Danielle exhaled, slowly. Justice had arrived. And this street was about to become a national headline. The street didn't just fall silent. It held its breath. Captain Reynolds stood stiff, his hand still gripping his hat, eyes locked on me like he'd just realized. The ground beneath him wasn't solid anymore. "General Moore," he repeated, his voice lower now. "I had no idea you were already in the city." "I wasn't supposed to announce myself," I replied. "That's the point of an inspection." Kyle's knees visibly weakened. "Captain, she's lying," Kyle blurted out, desperation cracking his voice. "She provoked me, she—" Reynolds turned so sharply it startled him. "You will not speak unless I ask you to." Kyle swallowed hard. Reynolds looked at me again. "General!" "Were you harmed?" I looked down at my soaked dress, the bruising already forming on my wrist, where the handcuffs had been tightened too hard. "Yes," I said. "Physically and publicly." A murmur spread through the crowd. Phones zoomed in. "This officer," I continued calmly, "used a fire hose on me for amusement, then detained me when I questioned it. No warning, no cause." Reynolds turned toward the second officer. "Is that accurate?" The officer's voice shook. "Sir, yes." Kyle's face went pale. Reynolds closed his eyes for a brief second. The kind of pause leaders take when they already know the damage is irreversible. He opened them. "Kyle Brenner," he said, voice firm and cold. "You are suspended effective immediately, pending federal investigation. Hand over your radio." Kyle's hand trembled as he unclipped it. "And your body cam." Kyle froze. It was off." That did it. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Reynolds stepped closer, his voice dropping. "You turned off your body cam during a civilian interaction?" Kyle's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Reynolds straightened and spoke loudly now, for everyone. He was arrested. No badge, no uniform, no laughter. Just consequences. Later that afternoon, I returned to the street, and not for revenge, but resolve. People recognized me now. Some apologized for staying quiet. Others simply nodded with respect. One young girl stepped forward, holding her mother's hand. "You were brave," she said. "I knelt so we were eye to eye. So will you be." Justice isn't loud. It doesn't need anger. It needs truth, dignity, and courage. And sometimes, just one call.